Hi guys, welcome back to my channel for a brand new true crime video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the murder of Banaz Mahmod. If you are new here, I upload 1 or 2 true crime videos every single week, so if that's something that you think you might want to stick around for and be a part of, then definitely hit the subscribe button. I would love for you to join my little family that I have here on YouTube. But yeah, like I said, today we're going to be talking about the murder of Banaz Mahmod, and today's case is actually one of the hardest cases that I've ever researched for me personally. Does that make sense? Basically what I mean is I don't think I've ever been as affected by a case as I have by this one. I don't really know why, because it's not the most gruesome case, it's not the most gory case, it's just really sad. I mean, all the cases that I cover are sad, but there was just something about this case that really just got to me. I actually had to stop halfway through researching this case. It's taken me a few weeks to research, but I actually had to stop halfway through researching this case and actually think, do I actually want to cover this video? Because it was really getting to me. It was really affecting me. It was really taking a toll on my mental health, to be honest. But I decided that I did want to still cover it because I think it's so important to get Banaz's story told. So I guess that's a little bit of a pre-warning for you guys. This case is a bit of a heavy one, so yeah. Quickly before I get into the case, I just want to say all the information I have found on this case has been from multiple different sources on the internet, such as articles and documentaries and stuff like that. So I do apologise if anything is incorrect, or if you think that I have missed something out that's really important to the case, please feel free to let me know in the comments. And without further ado, let's get into today's case. So Banaz Mahmod was a 20-year-old woman born on the 16th of December 1985 in Iraq in Western Asia. Banaz was a Muslim woman born into an Iraqi Kurdish family, and Banaz's parents, Mahmoud Babakir Mahmod, and her mother, whose name I actually don't know. I don't think her mother's name is public information, but her parents were very, very strict Muslims, and they brought up Banaz and her 5 siblings with the same strict religious beliefs and rules. I believe that Banaz had 4 sisters and 1 brother, and like I said, they were all brought up by their parents in a very strict religious way. However, Banaz and her siblings didn't really have the best relationships with their parents. They were often physically abused and beaten by their father, Mahmod. Mahmod would often beat his children if he felt that they were doing something wrong that didn't comply with the strict religious rules that he had brought them up in. He would just beat them and kick them and punch them if he felt that they were doing something that brought shame onto the family. The Mahmod family moved to London in England as refugees when Banaz was 10 years old in 1995. However, it wasn't just Banaz's immediate family that moved to South London. A lot of her extended family did as well. And this included Banaz's father's brother, so her uncle Ari Mahmod, and some of her cousins. Banaz's uncle Ari Mahmod was kind of seen as the head of the family. He was the most wealthiest in the family, so because of that he was seen as the one to have the most power. And because he was the head of the family, he would decide everyone else's roles within the family. He was the one who made the decisions. And like I said at the start of the video, the Kurdish community that Banaz and her siblings were all brought up in was very, very strict, a very, very strict religion, especially for women. There were a lot of rules and regulations within the Kurdish community, and if someone didn't stick to them, if a family member didn't stick to them, it would bring great shame upon the family. Like I said, the Kurdish Islamic religion was very, very strict for women. It was strict for both genders, don't get me wrong, however, it was particularly strict for women. Women in the Kurdish community were expected to act a certain way, expect to behave a certain way, and present and dress themselves in a certain way. And Banaz's parents wanted the same for their daughters. They wanted to present and behave in a way that was acceptable within the Kurdish community. Women were not allowed to paint their nails, they weren't allowed to wear perfume, they weren't allowed to dye their hair or anything like that. Just typical kind of normal girly things they weren't allowed to do. That wasn't acceptable within the Kurdish community. And the role of a woman within this community was to be married to a man that their family and their parents deemed appropriate and had chosen themselves, and then to just grow up and have children and just kind of be a typical housewife that cooks and cleans and just obeys their husband. As soon as a woman is married to a man of the Kurdish community, he's pretty much the husband's property. Women are expected to serve and obey their husbands and just do everything that they tell them to do. Honour was just the most important thing within the Kurdish community. It was often more important to them than life itself, and if they felt that someone brought shame or dishonour upon the community, then there would be consequences and the whole family would be frowned upon. And so, like I said, this was no different for Banaz and her siblings. They all had expectations from their parents and their community that they were expected to obey. But going back to Banaz, growing up, Banaz was described as a very happy, a very calm, bubbly little child. She was quite smart and she really enjoyed school. Banaz also hated arguments. That was one thing that everyone said about her. She hated upsetting people. She hated confrontation. She just didn't like arguing with people.
She was a very calm and quiet person. She loved to see people happy. She did not like arguments. She just wanted a happy life. She wanted, you know, a family.
She was just an ordinary kid growing up in South London.
She had a nickname, Naska, means softness, like delicate, you know, like a newborn lamb.
And I believe that Banaz was quite close to her siblings, including her older sister, Bakal. However, when Banaz's older sister, Bakal, turned 16 years old, she actually decided to leave the family home because she was sick of the regular beatings that she had sustained from her father, and she hated the such strict rules that she was expected to obey and live by. However, by Bakal doing this, by her going against her family, it brought great shame upon them and dishonour, and so her parents were not happy about this at all. And so because of this, their father, Mahmod, actually ordered his son, so Banaz's and Bakal's brother, to go and murder Bakal for the dishonour that she had brought upon the family. Mahmod paid his son to go and kill his sister for the shame that they felt she had brought upon the family. And so one day Banaz's sister went to go and kill Bakal, and he actually hit her over the head with a dumbbell, which obviously knocked her down. However, he didn't manage to kill her. It wasn't successful. And thankfully, Bakal survived the attack. However, at this point, she knew that her family were trying to kill her, and so she had to go into hiding.
He just hit me over the head with a dumbbell, a single arm weight. He put his arm around my neck, lifting me off my feet almost. You know, me panicking, I started trying to get myself free from him. I bit his arm, in the bend of his arm. I kicked on his knee, and he let go of me. And I said to him, look what you're doing. You're actually trying to kill me. And I'm saying this, screaming out to him, and he stopped for a minute and he started crying like a woman. You know, really, really crying, and he said, I'm really sorry, but I'm the big boy, I'm the big man. After my dad, I have to do this. Put a shame to an end. That is exactly his words, actually. And he told me that my dad actually paid him to do this to me.
However, despite Bakal knowing that this attack was arranged by her father, she decided not to report it to the police, and she just decided to go into hiding from her own family. In 2003, when Banaz was 17 years old, her parents actually arranged a marriage for her. The man that her parents decided Banaz was going to marry was 10 years older than Banaz, so he was a lot older than her, and she didn't even know him. I believe she only met this man once or twice before they actually eventually married. And so Banaz obviously didn't want this marriage. She didn't want to be married to a man that was 1, 10 years older than her, and 2, she had only met like once or twice. But like I said at the start of the video, Banaz hated confrontation. She hated arguing with her family, so she just went along with it and did what her parents wanted her to do. And also, Banaz knew that this was the norm within the Kurdish culture. Parents would always choose like appropriate husbands for their daughters, and so she didn't really have a choice even if she didn't want to. But anyway, like I said, out of fear probably, Banaz just went through with this marriage, and she was married to this man. I don't actually know his name. I don't believe it's public information. However, she didn't have anything in common with this man. It was not a happy marriage in the slightest. This man was illiterate, so he couldn't read or write, and he was also a member of the Kurdish community, of course, because her parents wouldn't have let her marry someone that wasn't a part of the Kurdish community. But because he was a part of this community, he had the same views on women as the parents and everyone else in the Kurdish community, that women were men's property. In this man's eyes, as soon as Banaz had married this man, she was his property, she belonged to him, and she should do everything that he says. And so because of this, Banaz's husband would just completely control her life. Banaz's husband would control what she did and who she saw and who her friends were and everything like that. And he was also incredibly violent towards her. In fact, Banaz's husband would rape and beat her constantly. If she didn't want to have sex with him, he would not take no for an answer. He was going to have sex with her. If he wanted sex, he was going to get it, even if it meant raping and beating Banaz.
So describe your relationship then from the very early stages through to when things started to go wrong for you.
Well, he was just like, he was thinking like in 50 years back, like he was a strict husband. Whenever he wanted to have sex, it was just his way, always his way. Like whenever I said no, or he wouldn't take no for an answer, and he would just start raping me and doing what he liked to do. I tried to stop him, but he would slap me or hit me on the back or just pull me by the hair. I just started to like cover my body, like hold on like that. That's it. That's when he said to me he would kill me if I said anything to anyone. I was just 17 there then. I didn't know if this was normal in my culture or in here. I was only 17, so I just let him do what he liked. Whenever he raped me, it was like I was his shoe and he would wear it just whenever he felt like it.
She was just treated by her husband so horrifically, and obviously she hated this marriage. On one occasion, Banaz's sisters actually saw loads of bruises on Banaz, and so they knew that these were inflicted by the husband, and so the family went straight to the husband to confront him about it. And his response to these bruises and injuries on Banaz was just, yes, I do beat your daughter, but it's only because she's disrespectful, and yes, I do force her to have sex, but only when she says no. And instead of Banaz's parents being absolutely disgusted with how their daughter was being treated by this man, instead of them calling the police or arranging a divorce for Banaz, they just ordered her to go back to her husband and put up with it. They felt that this behaviour was acceptable, and to them, Banaz was her husband's property now, so he could do whatever he wanted to her. And so, like I said, Banaz was sent back by her parents to her husband, and they just told her that she needed to work harder at being a better wife. And so Banaz did exactly that. She just went back to her husband. She actually tried to make the relationship work. However, she couldn't. Obviously, she couldn't. She was being raped and beaten constantly, and she didn't want that, obviously. She was just so sick and tired at this point of the abuse that she had suffered that in 2005, after 2 years of marriage to this man, she decided to go against her family and divorce her abusive husband.
She just had enough. But of course, leaving your husband in my culture is not allowed. It's the worst thing to do for a woman.
Like I said, Banaz just didn't want that life. She wanted to be married to someone that she loved and she could have children with. She didn't want to be raped and beaten constantly. And Banaz did soon find a man that she decided she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. His name was Ramat Suleimani, and he was an Iranian Kurd, and I believe he and Banaz were actually good friends before they fell in love and eventually were in a relationship. Banaz and Ramat were just completely and utterly in love. They would text each other constantly, just letting each other know how much they missed and loved each other. They would often talk about their lives together and how they were going to get married one day and have children and all that kind of stuff that Banaz had always wanted. Banaz just wanted to be happy and be shown love, and that's exactly what Ramat showed her.
I think Banaz suddenly found a lot of freedom and a lot of joy and a lot of pleasure in meeting Ramat.
Originally theirs was just a friendship. They started to see each other and it developed into a full-blown relationship.
Rahmat, he's a lovely guy. We had planned to have kids, they had names, they had plans for everything, yeah.
However, Banaz's family instantly disapproved of Banaz's relationship with Ramat because Ramat himself did not follow the strict Kurdish culture, and so Banaz's parents didn't want her to marry him. They would literally have rather Banaz went back to her abusive, rapist, vile husband than be with Ramat, a genuinely nice and kind person, just because he wasn't of the same religion. And like I said, Banaz's family were furious that she had gone against them and got a divorce from her old husband and now found love with Ramat, and they just felt that this brought great shame and dishonour upon the family. And because of this, Banaz grew really fearful that because of her relationship with Ramat, her family might attempt to harm her or Ramat, and so she decided to keep her relationship with him secret. But despite Banaz keeping her relationship from her parents a secret, she still felt like she was being watched by her family. She felt as though her family had spies within the Kurdish community that would constantly follow her and stalk her and just watch her every move. And so Banaz and Ramat would rarely meet in public. They would hardly ever meet in public for fear of being seen by one of these spies. Like I said, Banaz just felt like she was constantly being watched and followed, and she didn't feel safe, and so she decided to go to a police station in London to report the stalking. She told police that she was really scared for her and Ramat's safety. She said that if anything ever happened to either of them, if they ever disappeared, if they were ever killed, it would always be her family. Her family would be responsible.
After Banaz left her husband, she was worried that men were following her in the street.
I recognised one face, and he hasn't come to my house ever, but I've seen him on occasions, on weddings and that. And even now, when I go out, I mean, one guy, as soon as I came out of the house, he was following me with a car. I heard someone calling my name in my language. So I turned around and he told me that he should give me a lift and I should go into his car. And I said no and just put my head down and keep walking. So that day he was just following me. People following me. Or still now they follow me. And that was the main reason that I came to the police station.
Okay.
That in the future or at any time, if anything happens to me, it's them.
However, despite Banaz reporting the stalking, the police just did nothing. They took all of the information that Banaz provided them with. However, they never actually did anything to help Banaz or protect her in any way from her family. They didn't question the family members. They didn't question anyone in the Kurdish community. They just made no effort to try and get involved and help Banaz. Then 2 months after Banaz went to the police station, she was actually seen by one of the family spies outside Morden train station kissing her boyfriend Ramat. And so this spy of the Kurdish community went straight back to Banaz's family and told them what he had just seen, and the family were furious. Because up until now, Banaz had kept her relationship with Ramat a secret from her family, and so they didn't think that she was with him anymore, but this spy had just seen her kissing him, and so her family were furious. So because of this, Banaz's father, Mahmod and his brother, so Banaz's uncle, Ari Mahmod, decided to hold a meeting with other members of the family and Kurdish community so that they could all sit down and discuss what Banaz's fate would be, what they were going to do to her for bringing shame upon the family. And that same day, Banaz overheard a phone call that her mother had with her uncle, Ari Mahmod. In this phone call between her mother and her uncle, Banaz heard Ari saying that they had made the decision to kill Banaz and her boyfriend Ramat simply for being together. And so Banaz was obviously terrified. She had overheard this phone call where her family were plotting her own murder, and so she decided to go back to the police station. She went back to the police station to make another statement to police, and she also wrote a letter to police stating that she had good reason to believe her family were going to kill her. This letter was written by Banaz on the 5th of December 2005, and in the letter, Banaz would refer to members of her family as numbers. So she said, numbers 2, 3, 4, and 6 are going to kill me.
2 days after this family meeting, Banaz went to her local police station and made another statement. She said she'd heard her uncle saying she was going to be killed. And a week later, she delivered a letter to the police identifying 5 family members she said were going to murder her.
However, the letter didn't arrive to the police station until it was too late, and we'll talk more about the letter a little bit later on in the video. And despite Banaz going to the police station again, they did nothing to help her. However, Banaz did say to police that she didn't want them to take action against her family. I don't know why. Maybe she was scared of her family. Maybe she thought that would make them even angrier, or maybe she just didn't want to get her family in trouble. They were still her family. However, I still believe that police should have done something. They should have done something to try and protect Banaz. If even there was a small chance that what Banaz was saying was true, that her family were plotting to kill her, police should have done something. And then a few weeks later, after Banaz had written this letter on the 31st of December 2005, Banaz's father actually asked Banaz to attend a family meeting so that they could discuss what was going on with her divorce from her old ex-husband. However, that wasn't his plan at all. When Banaz got to the house, her father forced her to down a bottle of brandy to obviously make her drunk and make her less able to defend herself against what he was about to do. He then sat Banaz down on the sofa and ordered her to keep watching the television, and he ordered her not to turn around and look at what he was doing behind her. However, obviously wanting to know what was going on, Banaz did look behind her and she saw her father wearing training shoes and blue rubber gloves, and she instantly knew what he was planning. She knew that he was about to kill her. And so Banaz knew that she needed to leave, she needed to escape, otherwise she was going to be killed. And so when her father left the room, she saw an opportunity. Banaz ran to the back of the house and she punched her fist through the glass of a neighbour's window to get their attention, because she obviously needed help. She then climbed out of the window and over a fence, and she started running down the street barefoot. And obviously at this point she would have been drunk, she would have been intoxicated because her father had forced her to drink a bottle of brandy. Banaz was bleeding from her hands and wrists where she had been tied up by her father so tightly, and she actually collapsed outside the door of a nearby cafe. Banaz was taken to hospital, and hospital staff actually said that they had never seen anyone so frightened and terrified. Banaz, she was just so scared. She thought she was going to die that night. The hospital staff contacted Banaz's boyfriend Ramat, and he went straight to the hospital to go and see her. Whilst Banaz was being wheeled through the hospital on the hospital trolley, Ramat actually asked Banaz to tell him exactly what happened, but he decided to film her as she was doing so. I'm not sure why Ramat decided to do this. Maybe he was planning to take it to police for evidence, but I'll put those clips in now. They're so sad. You can just see how terrified Banaz is.
And Ramat had the presence of mind, whilst Banaz was lying on the hospital trolley, to ask Banaz to tell him exactly what had happened, and at the same time he was recording on his mobile what she had to say.
پردەکان هەموو دادرابوونەوە تاریک بوو هەر تەلەڤیزیۆنەکە ئاوکرابوو یان سعودی دووبارە شەخش هاتن کارێکی ڕەشی لەبەر بوون ئیروبۆک دەستکەشێکی شین لا دەستکەشەوەدا بڕۆمە دەرێ ئەیش دانیشە خەوتە ئەوشان دانیشتمەوە هەتا ئەوتۆ ژوورەکەی دەکە دووبارە.
And then straight after she was discharged from hospital, she went straight back to the police station again to tell them exactly what happened, because at this point she needed help, she needed protection. Now she had proof that her parents were trying to kill her. Because obviously before, Banaz was just worried that her parents might try and kill her, but now they had actually attempted, her father had actually attempted to kill her, so she had proof that they were in fact trying to murder her. But once again, police just did nothing. They did nothing to try and intervene. They did nothing to try and get Banaz the protection and safety that she needed. In fact, one police officer actually didn't believe Banaz. This officer just said that she felt that Banaz was lying. She felt that Banaz was just a woman who had gotten drunk and just made the whole thing up. And unbelievably, this police officer even considered charging Banaz with criminal damage for breaking and smashing the neighbour's window when she was trying to escape from the house. I just couldn't imagine how Banaz would have felt in that situation, because she had just managed to escape her father murdering her, and then she goes to the police station and some of the police officers just don't even believe her. They don't even believe her claims, and they just don't help her once again. At this point, Banaz had gone to the police about her family on 5 separate occasions. 5 separate occasions, she went to the police station and told them that she was in danger, her family were trying to kill her, and they did nothing, like I said. Police work in this case is just one of the worst cases of bad police work that I have ever seen. It's just so disappointing. They let Banaz down so much. I think police on a day-to-day do an absolutely amazing job, and I couldn't do what they do. However, in cases like this, it's just so disappointing when you see how many times Banaz tried to get help from the police and they just did nothing. They did nothing to help her. After Banaz was discharged from hospital, she was staying with her boyfriend Ramat for a short period of time. However, she was then asked by her family to come back home. And unbelievably, Banaz did. She went back to her family home. She probably thought that even after everything that had happened with her family, she still wanted her family. She wanted to make amends with them. Even though they had tried to kill her, she still wanted her family. She still loved her family. Like I keep saying throughout this video, Banaz hated arguments. She hated confrontation, especially with her family. And so in her eyes, she probably wanted to make amends, even after they tried to kill her. And then on the 23rd of January 2006, Banaz sent one of her last texts to her boyfriend Ramat, and this said, "Just be careful, Ramat, please, because I don't think I could live a second without you. I love you so much." And then the next day, on the 24th of January 2006, Banaz disappeared. She went missing. And so Ramat, her boyfriend, fearing the worst, decided to contact police and report her as a missing person. And so police began their investigation into Banaz's disappearance, and they began questioning people who were a part of the Kurdish community around the local areas. But absolutely nothing came of this. No one in the Kurdish community wanted to help. They didn't care to help police with the investigation. In fact, some members of the Kurdish community would actually give police false tips and leads to waste their time and throw them off of the scent of what actually happened to Banaz. The people who did this were later charged with perverting the cause of justice for wasting police time in the investigation. So then police decided to go and speak to Banaz's sister Bekal just to see if she had heard from Banaz, if maybe Banaz was staying with her, because at this point Bekal was still in hiding from her own family. However, when they spoke to Bekal and they told her that her sister was missing, Bekal knew straight away what had happened. Bekal just knew that instantly her family had something to do with Banaz's disappearance, and she told police that something sinister had probably happened to Banaz.
I had the police knocking on my door, asking if they could come in, and they said to me, "It's about your sister. Your sister's gone missing." So when they said to me she's gone missing and my family don't know, I knew that wasn't true. I knew that was not true, because I just knew in my heart that, you know, it's to do with the family members, the men. I knew it.
In March of 2006, Bekal actually received a phone call from a member of the Kurdish community, and they were just threatening Bekal, saying that they knew where she was hiding and that she was the next to be killed. And so police put Bekal and Ramat, Banaz's boyfriend, into police protection and moved them from place to place, just because if a member of the Kurdish community found out where they were living, they would probably be killed. A little while after Banaz's disappearance, whilst they were still investigating her case, police actually received the letter that she had written on the 5th of December 2005. And if you remember, in this letter, Banaz stated that she had good reason to believe that her family were going to kill her, and she referred to the members in her family as numbers. And using this letter that Banaz had written, police were able to trace the individuals in her family that she was referring to. And the people that these numbers were traced to were actually 3 cousins of Banaz's. These 3 cousins were called Omar Hussein, Muhammad Ali and Muhammad Hammer.
And from that letter, we were able subsequently to identify some of the people that she was talking about, and the letter was accurate in every detail of what she said about these men as Omar Hussein, Muhammad Ali, Muhammad Hammer. And those 3 men are all cousins, so they are cousins of Banaz and they are cousins of each other.
At this point, police believed that Banaz was most likely dead and killed by these cousins that she had talked about in the letter. However, they still had not located the whereabouts of her body. However, despite there being very little physical evidence that Banaz was even dead, they still decided to arrest these 3 men on suspicion of her murder. The first to be arrested and charged with Banaz's murder was Mohammed Hammer. However, police were actually having trouble trying to locate the other 2 men. Meanwhile, police were still trying to find Banaz's body, and they were looking in woodland areas, rivers, lakes, just anywhere where her body might have been dumped. And her family, her parents, just did not show any interest whatsoever in the investigation. They weren't ringing the police and asking, you know, what's going on with the investigation? Have you found our daughter yet? Or anything like that. They didn't care. In a search for the 2 other cousins believed to have been involved in the murder of Banaz, police actually managed to trace their GPS, their phone GPS, which showed that the 2 men had been travelling in a hire car up and down from London to Birmingham. And this was really odd to the police. Why would these 2 men need to travel continuously from London to Birmingham, up and down, going from one place to another? It was just really odd. And because the car that the 2 men were using was actually a hire car, it meant that there was a record of every single place the car had been parked. And so police decided to send a helicopter up over all the places where the car had been frequently parked, and one area where the car had been parked several times was actually outside a house. And whilst helicopters were hovering over this particular house, they saw in the back garden just a load of random items like a freezer and just a load of stuff that wouldn't normally be in a garden, in a back garden. And so because this was a little bit odd and suspicious, 2 police officers were actually sent to this house with a search warrant to have a look around the back garden.
2 Mohammeds followed a really strange pattern of behaviour in that their telephones were showing that they were coming back down to London, toing and froing between London and Birmingham.
Mohammed Hammer's car was a hire car. The GPS, or the equivalent in his car, meant that there was a record of every place it had been, and the police just sent up a helicopter to hover around the area where the cars had been parked.
We got some information about there being a freezer over their grave. And Caroline and I were sitting there when we got this information. She went, "We've seen that freezer, haven't we?" And I went, "Yeah." We're sitting there trying to rack our brains, and she suddenly went, "That's on the video. Where's the video?" So we looked at it, and sure enough, there's a freezer in this back garden that we see from the helicopter that I was up in. So that was it. We were like, that's got to be there. So Stuart and I got in the car and literally drove up there that night.
And whilst these officers were looking around these items and the freezer, and whilst they were looking under the freezer, they noticed that the ground and the earth and the soil under the freezer had recently been disturbed, as though someone had buried something under it. And so they were digging up the soil, they were digging up the ground, and buried 6 feet under was a suitcase, and inside this suitcase was the body of a young woman. This young woman was in a fetal position in the suitcase, and she was later identified as that of 20-year-old Banaz Mahmod.
We took with us a forensic archaeologist who looked at the ground outside in the rear garden and immediately saw that there had been a disturbance in the earth towards the back of the house.
I had a knock on the door, and it was my family liaison officer. But she won't speak to me until I sit down and have a friend there with me, and just tears just floated out. I couldn't control myself. I wanted to just be out of my skin, just die. It was, you know, they said to me they'd found my sister buried in a suitcase, and water pipes had broken while they'd put her down there. So it was quite severe, the situation. It was quite horrible. It just shattered me into pieces.
Banaz's body had been very badly decomposed, as it had been there in the suitcase. It was thought since she had gone missing, and so it was very decomposed. It was unrecognisable as Banaz. And because it was so badly decomposed, it was going to be really hard in terms of DNA and forensics to be able to get any evidence off of this body. However, police were sure they knew who was responsible, and 3 men were actually arrested and charged for Banaz's murder. The first being Mohammed Hammer, who, if you remember, was one of the 3 cousins who was believed to be involved in the actual murder of Banaz. And the other 2 men that were arrested was actually Banaz's father, Mahmod, and his brother, so Banaz's uncle, Ari Mahmod, on suspicion of being the ones who actually physically organised the murder. However, the other 2 cousins of Banaz, Omar Hussein and Muhammad Ali, who were also suspected of being the ones who physically carried out the murder, were nowhere to be found. And it was discovered that these 2 men had actually fled to Iraq and gone on the run. Meanwhile, by piecing together all of the evidence that police had found and examining Banaz's kind of injuries, police were able to establish what they believed happened on the day of Banaz's murder. It's believed that on the 24th of January 2011, all 3 cousins, Omar Hussein, Muhammad Ali and Mohammed Hammer, all met at Mohammed Hammer's address, and then they all went together to Banaz's address. When they arrived, Banaz's parents actually left the property because they obviously were aware of what was about to happen. And police managed to secretly record Mohammed Hammer talking about what he himself and the other two men did to Banaz on the day of her murder, and he's like boasting and bragging and laughing about it, and it's just disgusting. Mohammed said that the three men burst into the property where Banaz was in the living room, and straight away Banaz knew that she was about to be killed. The three men then raped and tortured Banaz. They were beating her, slapping her, kicking her, all that kind of stuff, and then they placed a ligature around her neck and tried to strangle her to death. However, on these recordings, Mohammed is heard saying that it took a while for Banaz to die because her soul wouldn't leave her body. And so the three men tightened the ligature around her neck so it was so tight. And at this point, it probably would have been cutting into Banaz's neck, so she would have been bleeding. And within 4 to 5 minutes of these men strangling her with this ligature, Banaz would have been dead.
The police had secretly recorded Mohammed Hammer. He was taped talking about what happened that morning.
He was boasting, blatantly boasting about what those men had done to Banaz that morning, and them laughing and slapping each other on the back, you know, being manly. They were slapping her, fucking her. I have fucked her anally. The bitch's soul was not getting discharged with anything. It took more than half an hour. Well, I put my leg there on her back, Mohammed on her neck. He made the cord like a hook. I held her hand and said, put it around quickly, and when she heard that, she was terrified. He immediately put the cord around her neck. She was vomiting. Well, he put the wire around her neck and gave it to me. Then I was holding to the cord so tight and stamping on her neck as well. When I stamped on the back of her neck, her mouth and nose were on the floor, and that was in the suitcase. I was saying, let her soul be discharged. I was kicking her head. The soul would not discharge that easily. The wire around her neck, it went deep through the skin. Her soul was not getting discharged. Because he was able to tighten it further, he tightened it around her neck, and it didn't take more than 4 to 5 minutes. Her soul was discharged, and she didn't make a sound.
They then put her body into the suitcase in the fetal position and then buried it under the freezer in the back garden where it was later found. Meanwhile, in their questionings, Banaz's uncle and father were just denying that they had done anything wrong. They said that because Banaz had brought shame and dishonour upon the family, that she deserved to die. They just said that because Banaz had brought shame on the family by being in a relationship with Ramat and by divorcing her ex-husband, that she deserved to die that day and it was her own fault.
No, I'm sorry.
You don't want to tell your side of the story?
I'm sorry.
Who killed Banaz? Will you not agree to give us your side of the story? Okay, come with me now. I'm doing a documentary about your case, and I'm wondering if you want to speak. Who killed Banaz? You're innocent, then who killed Banaz?
You are a liar. Your job is just to lie.
No, I'm saying you did not.
Liar.
Banaz's sister Bekkau and her boyfriend Rama actually made the really brave decision to testify against the Mahmod family in court and give evidence. And I really admire them for having the courage to do this, because by doing that, they were putting their own lives in danger, because if other people in the Kurdish community found out that they were giving evidence against another family in the Kurdish community, then their lives would have been in danger. They probably would have been killed. However, they were placed in police protection for fears that they would be killed by someone in the Kurdish community, and they actually had to keep moving from place to place just in case someone found out about where they were living. And Bekkau is still actually in hiding from her own family in the Kurdish community to this day. She's done a few interviews since regarding Banaz's murder, which you would have seen dotted in and out of this video. But she actually has to cover her whole entire face, not out of choice, just because if someone recognises her, it's likely that she will be murdered as well. And Banaz's boyfriend Ramat was actually given a new identity. But anyway, back to the cases against Banaz's father and her uncle. They were both found guilty and given life sentences for arranging Banaz's murder. Banaz's cousin Mohammed Hammer actually pled guilty, and he also received a life sentence for being one of the men to physically kill Banaz. At this point, however, police had still been unable to locate the two other men, the two other cousins who were involved in Banaz's murder, because the other two men, Muhammad Ali and Omar Hussein, had fled to Iraq and gone on the run, like I said previously. And months went by, and it was really hard for police to be able to find and arrest these men because no one had ever been extradited from the UK to Iraq before, but police were determined to make sure that these men faced justice for what they did to Banaz. However, in 2007, both men were actually arrested by Iraqi police for two different separate things. Omar Hussein was actually shot in the leg by his brother after an argument. I don't know what the nature of this argument was, but after he was treated in hospital, he was taken into police custody for questioning. And Muhammad Ali was actually arrested by Iraqi police for being involved in a car crash. And so at this point, both men were in police custody in Iraq for two different completely separate crimes. And so the team in the UK who were investigating Banaz's murder went straight over to Iraq. They were sent over to Iraq to try and get the court there to extradite these men so that they could be arrested and charged in the UK for Banaz's murder. And overall, it took 3 years for Omar Hussein and Muhammad Ali to eventually be found guilty of Banaz's murder, and they were both given life sentences. So now 5 people were in prison for Banaz's murder. Her father, Mahmod, and her uncle, Ari Mahmod, were in prison for organising her murder. And the 3 cousins, Muhammad Hamma, Muhammad Ali, and Omar Hussein, were in prison for being the ones to physically carry out the murder. Like I said earlier on in the video, in the last 4 months of Banaz's life, she went to the police station on 5 separate occasions. 5 separate occasions she went to the police station because she was terrified that her family would kill her. And police really let her down. And so because of this, an inquiry was launched into police misconduct because obviously police really let Banaz down in this situation, like I said. The subject of honour killings is a hard one for police because often police forces are really hesitant to get involved because they don't want to come across as disrespectful to religions or racist or anything like that. So it's really hard for police in that situation. And I get that and I do understand that. However, in this case, a 20-year-old woman lost her life because police were too scared to get involved, and that's just not acceptable. There just needs to be more done about honour killings because it happens a lot more often than you might think. There just needs to be more done. I think police should be more educated on honour killings, on what to do in that kind of situation. I don't know. In May of 2016, 10 years after Banaz's murder, her boyfriend Ramat actually took his own life. Ramat just said that there was absolutely no life for him after Banaz was murdered because she was his life and he loved her so much. I get really emotional. I promised myself I would try and get through this video without crying, but that part just honestly breaks me. But yeah, that is the end of this case. Like I said at the start of the video, this case has really stuck with me. I research a lot of cases and I'm quite good at not getting too affected by them. Obviously, they all make me sad, but I'm quite good at not getting too affected by them. There was just something about this one when I was reading about it and when I was researching for this case, I found it really hard. I just couldn't imagine the kind of fear Banaz would have felt in the last few months of her life, and the fact that she kept going to police and no one was doing anything, that really gets to me. She was just majorly let down in this case. Sorry, I know I keep saying it, but she just was. But yeah, anyway, that is the end of this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you're new here, please do subscribe if you think that you might enjoy my kind of content. And leave me a comment down below letting me know what you think of the case. I'd really like to know. I love replying to your comments. It's my favourite thing ever. I get so excited when I see that someone has commented on my videos. But yeah, that's everything I think I had to say. I should probably go now because my camera battery is flashing. I've been filming this video for like 2.5 hours. I'm tired.
What would you like me to convert 2.5 hours to?
What the hell? That's creepy. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again very, very soon for another true crime video. Bye!